Sheikh Amir Al-Nur stood motionless beside the dark water, while Maria Santos slipped beneath the surface in the most expensive hotel in Dubai. Moments after a hidden phone call changed everything. A grand wedding was held inside one of the most expensive luxury hotels in Dubai, a place known for hosting royalty, billionaires, and international elites. The entire building had been reserved for this single event, and normal guests were not allowed to enter. Security was tight, with guards positioned at every entrance, elevator, and hallway. The atmosphere was filled with wealth and control, where every detail was carefully designed to impress and to protect. The groom was Sheikh Amir Al-Nur, a man known across the region for his influence in trade, construction, and political connections. He was young compared to other rulers in his circle, but already carried the reputation of someone who never lost control in business or personal matters. People around him respected him, but also disappointing him. The bride, Maria Santos, had come from the Philippines. She worked as a nurse before moving abroad in search of better opportunities. Her life had changed quickly after meeting people connected to the Sheikh's circle. What began as a professional transition slowly turned into something more complex, until she found herself agreeing to a marriage that brought her into a world far from her own reality. The wedding ceremony was designed like a royal celebration. White flowers covered the halls, golden chandeliers reflected soft light across marble floors, and musicians played calm traditional tunes mixed with modern orchestration. Guests arrived in luxury cars, wearing expensive clothing, speaking in quiet tones about business and power rather than love. Maria stood in the center of it all, wearing a carefully designed dress that made her look like she belonged in this world, but inside, she felt disconnected. She smiled when needed, followed instructions from attendants, and moved through the ceremony like someone observing her own life from a distance. The Sheikh appeared confident and calm, welcoming guests with controlled gestures. Cameras followed his every movement, capturing moments that would later be shared in media controlled by his network. To the outside world, it looked like a perfect union between two different lives joining together in harmony. But behind the beauty of the event, there were quiet signs of tension. Maria's behavior showed hesitation at moments when she thought no one was watching. The Sheikh's security team stayed unusually close, monitoring not just the guests but also the bride herself. Every phone, every message, every movement was under silent observation. As the ceremony reached its final stage, the night outside grew darker over the sea. The hotel lights reflected across the water like a separate world untouched by what was happening inside. The wedding was declared a success in public view, but the atmosphere, fear carried an unspoken weight that no decoration or celebration could fully hide. After the wedding ceremony ended, the celebrations slowly shifted from public halls to private spaces reserved for the newly married couple. The guests remained in banquet areas, continuing their formal gatherings, while Maria was escorted toward the presidential suite on the upper floor of the hotel. The corridors were quiet, lined with soft lighting and thick carpets that absorbed every sound. Security presence increased the closer she moved toward the private wing, where only authorized individuals were allowed to enter. Inside the suite, everything had been prepared in advance. Fresh flowers were placed on tables, curtains were drawn halfway to reveal the night view of the sea, and a tray of untouched refreshments sat near the entrance. The space was large, but it felt controlled, almost staged, as if every object had been placed to maintain an image rather than comfort. Maria was left alone by swiftly as staff withdrew and security positioned themselves outside the suite. The silence inside the room felt heavier than the noise of the wedding earlier. She moved slowly, taking in her surroundings, aware that this moment marked a permanent change in her life. Her personal belongings from before the wedding were no longer visible, replaced entirely by items chosen for her new status. During this short window of isolation, she accessed a hidden mobile device she had managed to keep with her. The device was not part of the official arrangements and had not been registered with hotel security systems. Using it, she made contact with someone from her past life in the Philippines, a person who had once been emotionally significant to her. The communication was brief but carried emotional weight that contrasted sharply with the world she had just entered. Unnoticed by her, the hotel's advanced monitoring system detected irregular signal activity originating from the suite. Although personal privacy was expected for high-profile guests, the hotel maintained strict surveillance protocols due to the Sheikh's status. The data was automatically flagged and sent to a private security team responsible for monitoring all digital activity linked to the royal residence areas. Within minutes, the information began moving through internal channels. What was initially a technical alert became a matter of concern due to the bride's identity and the strict expectations surrounding her behavior. The Sheikh's advisors were informed discreetly, and the situation was treated with caution rather than immediate confrontation. Outside the suite, life in the hotel continued as if nothing unusual had occurred. Guests remained unaware of the quiet chain of events unfolding behind closed doors. The contrast between celebration and surveillance created a hidden tension within the building. Maria, still inside the suite, remained unaware that her brief connection to her past had already been detected and was now being interpreted in ways she did not yet understand. The information regarding the bride's unauthorized communication reached the Sheikh's private security circle within a short time. In his world, reputation and control were not treated as separate values, but as the same foundation of authority. Any action that suggested secrecy or disobedience, especially on a night as significant as the wedding, was considered more than a personal issue. It was viewed as a potential threat to trust, image, and internal stability. Maria, meanwhile, remained inside the hotel suite unaware of how quickly the situation had escalated. After the brief phone call, she had returned to preparing herself for the formal expectations of the evening. She moved through the space quietly, still adjusting to the reality of her new environment. The luxury around her no longer felt impressive. Instead, it felt unfamiliar and distant, like a life she had entered without fully understanding the rules. Outside the suite, the Sheikh's security team reviewed the flag data in silence. Their work was precise and methodical. They traced the signal, confirmed the time of contact, and documented the device used. The conclusion they formed was not based on emotion, but on protocol. Any external communication without authorization was classified as a breach of trust. The Sheikh was informed privately. He did not react immediately in any visible way. Instead, he chose to continue his public obligations with guests for a short time, maintaining the image expected of him. However, the atmosphere around him subtly changed. Those familiar with him noticed a shift in his focus, a quiet withdrawal from celebration into calculation. Later in the evening, Maria left the suite and walked through the hotel's private garden area. The pathway was surrounded by carefully maintained greenery and soft lighting that reflected off water features and decorative pools. From above, security cameras transmitted movement patterns, recording each step without interruption. At the same time, the Sheikh also moved toward the same section of the hotel grounds. His arrival was not announced publicly, and staff presence in the area became more controlled. There was no recorded verbal confrontation between the two, but surveillance systems confirmed that both were present in the restricted outdoor zone within a short interval of each other. The environment itself remained quiet, with only distant sounds of the ongoing celebration reaching the garden. Security feeds later showed overlapping movement paths near the private pool section, an area reserved strictly for authorized access. The recordings did not capture clear interaction, but they confirmed proximity during a critical time window. Shortly after this, the camera angle shifted due to routine rotation protocols. For several minutes, visibility in that specific section was reduced before the system returned to full coverage. When the FAD stabilized again, the sequence of events that followed was already underway, leaving only fragmented evidence of what had occurred in the gap. Shortly before midnight, the atmosphere inside the hotel shifted from celebration into unease, though most guests remained unaware of it. Music and conversation still echoed through the banquet halls, but in the restricted outdoor section near the private infinity pool, the environment felt completely separate from the rest of the building. The lighting was softer there, reflecting across the water surface in long, shifting patterns that made the area appear calm on the surface while remaining tightly controlled by surveillance systems. Security operators inside the monitoring room noticed irregularities in the camera feed timeline from the garden sector. The system did not show a clear emergency at first, but there were brief interruptions in visual continuity that triggered internal alerts. These gaps were not supposed to happen in a security red royal zone, and technicians immediately began reviewing backup recordings. A short time later, staff assigned to perimeter patrol received a silent instruction to check the pool area physically. They arrived within minutes, moving through pathways that were now noticeably quieter than earlier in the evening. The celebration sounds from inside the hotel felt distant, almost disconnected from what was unfolding outside. When they reached the infinity pool section, they observed signs of disturbance in the water surface and surrounding deck area. The calm reflection that usually defined the location was broken by uneven movement patterns across the pool. Emergency protocols were activated without delay, and medical response teams stationed within the hotel were called to the scene. Maria was located in the water and pulled out immediately by trained staff. The response was fast and coordinated, reflecting the hotel's strict preparation for high-profile emergencies. Efforts were made to revive her, with multiple personnel working in rotation under urgent conditions. Despite continuous attempts, there was no successful recovery of vital signs. The situation was escalated to senior security officials and hotel administration within minutes. The Sheikh was informed through private channels rather than public announcement systems. His movements were later confirmed by internal logs showing he had left the garden area shortly before the discovery was made, though no direct interaction was officially recorded in the final report. As medical teams concluded their efforts, the area was sealed off. Guests inside the hotel remained unaware of the incident, as staff worked quickly to prevent information from spreading beyond authorized personnel. Security teams began collecting footage from multiple angles, including corridor cameras, outdoor surveillance, and access logs from restricted entries. By the time official documentation began, the pool area had already and isolated from the rest of the hotel. The water was still, the lighting unchanged, and the surroundings returned to artificial calm. However, behind the controlled environment, investigators were already noting inconsistencies in timing, movement records, and missing segments in the surveillance sequence that would later become central to the unanswered questions surrounding the event. In the days following the incident, the hotel was placed under quiet but strict investigation. Publicly, everything was described as an unfortunate accident, and guests were told very little before being asked to leave. The luxury venue reopened normal services quickly, but certain areas remained restricted, especially the private infinity pool where the incident had taken place. Behind closed doors, however, pressure was building from multiple directions. An internal review team was formed first, consisting of hotel executives, private security analysts, and legal advisors connected to the owners. AP Group, their early conclusion leaned toward accidental drowning, supported by the initial medical findings and the lack of an obvious public struggle recorded in the visible footage. But as they continued reviewing digital logs, inconsistencies began to appear that could not be ignored. The most significant issue was the discovery of missing segments in the surveillance timeline. Several minutes of footage from critical angles had no usable recording, even though backup systems should have preserved them. Technicians could not immediately explain the gap, and some suggested system interference or manual deletion, though no single responsible source was confirmed. At the same time, investigators examined Maria's phone activity in more detail. The earlier call she made was reanalyzed, and while it had initially seemed personal, deeper tracking suggested the number she contacted was linked through indirect routing systems that masked its true origin. This raised questions about whether the communication was simply emotional or connected to something larger. Further background checks into Maria's movements before the wedding revealed unexpected findings. Her employment history, travel records, and recent contacts included indirect links to individuals associated with financial oversight roles in companies tied to the Sheikh's extended business network. These connections were not strong enough to form a direct accusation, but they introduced a new layer of complexity to her presence in the hotel. Within the security structure, interpretations began to split. Some believe the incident was a tragic outcome of emotional instability and misunderstanding. Others suggested that Maria may have unintentionally stepped into sensitive territory involving private financial information and internal disputes. Neither side could fully prove their theory due to limited evidence and controlled access to key data. The Sheikh himself remained publicly distant from the investigators. Official statements avoided assigning blame or confirming details, maintaining only that the matter was under review. Privately, however, movement within his security network intensified, with internal audits focusing on communication trails and personnel activity during the night of the event. As weeks passed, the case gradually lost public attention, replaced by other headlines and controlled narratives. Yet inside the hotel administration and associated security circles, the unanswered questions remained active. The missing footage, the unclear communication records, and the overlapping movements near the pool continued to resist a simple explanation. Officially, The case was closed as unresolved in certain reports, but internally it remained a subject of quiet concern, locked away behind confidentiality agreements and layers of influence that ensured the full truth would never fully reach the public surface.